Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. On this channel, we talk about everything product marketing. And today we're going to talk about the process that I typically go through before launching a product. Stick with me if you want to learn more about this topic. I break down this process via a step-by-step route. So each step is coming after the other step and after the other step, so that when you're going to launch a product this year, you know exactly what to be doing, at least from my perspective. Let's get started. The first thing that I typically do when I'm launching a product is to carry out my research. And my research is in three phases. I research the products, the customers, and competitors. Sometimes I'd also research like the market itself, just in case. It depends on the product. Sometimes I don't do like an entire market research, but many times I actually do. So it could be three, it could be four steps. And the first step being the research on the product is just so that I'm able to understand exactly everything the product can do. Many times before a product is built and ready is released, there's a bunch of features, there's a bunch of ideas that's flying around, and the only time you know for sure what is going to go out to the customer is at that point when the product is ready for release. So I need to go back and do like that final review and say, okay, these are the features that are launching for sure, these are all of the benefits, this according to internal teams, this particular feature or this particular thing is what we assume is the best thing about the product, because there always has to be that like that thing about every release. Okay, we're doing this release because we're launching this cool new thing. It does not need to be like super big or small. It just needs to be something about that release that you can talk to customers about and get them excited about. So I want to find that key thing about the release, about the product, that is cool. The second thing that I do is to research the customers, because it's important to know that the products you have can actually solve their problem in a way that they are thinking about solving that problem. So sometimes I get the customers to try out the product and understand how they were able to navigate from point A to point B to point C. Sometimes I don't always do it, but it's always important to get your customer's opinion before you throw a product out there. You want to understand what features or benefits they consider big deals for them for that your product, which ones are their favorites, because it helps you create great messaging and positioning around the things that customers actually love about that product. So it's important to talk to them. It's also important to do like a beta test if you can, just to see how customers are using it, how they're going through like the process flows in the product. Are they navigating smoothly from page to page, or are they encountering some issues? So at this point, if you see that there's problems, if I see that there's problems, I immediately bring it up to the product and we try to solve it before going further. Then the third research I do is the competitive research. So it's important to note that your competitor is not exactly a product. It's always just the alternative way that a customer is solving that problem. So for example, if I was launching a bookkeeping app, and this bookkeeping app is supposed to help business owners manage their bookkeeping online so that everything is kept together in a, it's all put together in one simple place. They're able to just reach out at any point in time to see how much they're spending versus how much they're losing. It's just a cleaner way to manage bookkeeping, right? But this customer might not necessarily be using another app to do this. They might be using paper and pen, which means the paper and pen is the competitor at this point. So what is it about your product that will make it more interesting for them to say, you know what, I'm going to drop paper and pen and use the product? Of course, this is what your competitor is. Sometimes it can also be a mix of paper and pen and a mix of a product. But what I'm just trying to say essentially is that it is just an alternative way that your customer is solving their problem today. And when I'm done with my competitors' research, at this point, I have like a great idea of what's going on. Oh, something to add though. During the competitors' research, some channels that you can check out are like their Play Store reviews, the App Store reviews, reviews on social media. If you have reviews on platforms like G2, you can also check G2 to see what customers are saying about the product, because their own customer sentiments is important. If you see that your competitors' customers consider XYZ thing a big strength for your competitor, then you might want to like at least be good at those things if you're going to go for your competitors' market as well. And the weaknesses that they have, it would also be a great idea for your products to solve some of the weaknesses your biggest competitors have, just so that when you're in the market trying to collect their customers or trying to share their customers, you're able to say, oh, this particular thing that you're still struggling with because your competitor has that weakness, your own product can solve for them. The final piece of research I do is usually around the market itself. So are there specific changes to the market that I want to know about, just so I'm launching, prepared. For example, I work in the fintech space, and every once in a while there are changes to regulations, just a bunch of changes that I want to stay on top of. And if I don't know these changes before I go ahead to launch the product, you can see how bad that can be for me. So yes, it's very important to understand the market. It also helps to know how the market is trending. Are customers now leaning more into AI or machine learning? You want to know this stuff because, you want your product to not sound tone deaf. You want to make sure that your product is you can fit into the way customers are trending and the way customers are moving. You want your product to be in the now. You don't want it to be like, I don't know. You get my point. So it's important to also pay attention to trends and just understand the market, what changes your industry might have introduced. After I conduct this research, my next step is to align on the business goals for the launch. So I set up a meeting with stakeholders. This could be my boss, the CEO. This could be the head of marketing. It depends. But in your organization, you just know the people you need to talk to. You have to loop in the product team, the sales team, customer support team, your operations team sometimes. So loop in relevant team members and align on the goals for the launch. At this point, you already have an idea of what customers consider the good part, the best part of that launch, the best part of that product you're about to throw in the market. So you're in a better position to, support the team as you align on goals. So if the team says, oh, our goal for this launch is to get to 10,000 active users, and you already know that most that from the way that customers use the product during your research, they wouldn't use the product unless they test it out. So at this point, you can suggest that you say, no, you know what, our goal for the first month should be number of free users converting to paid users, right? Because it's a better metric to track. It's something that tells you for a fact that the product makes sense, because if free users are not converting to paid users, then there's a problem. So at this point, you're able to advise the team and say, instead of just tracking active users, let's track people that are converting from free to paid. And just to make your metric more substantial, it doesn't mean you can't also track active users. It's also good to track. All I'm saying is you're aligning at this point when you already have like information from your research, puts you at a better position. You sound smart when you bring up suggestions to the team. And this smartness comes from, of course, the in-depth conversations and research you've already done on your own or with the team. So yes, you align on the goals, and then you write it down, you document it, you understand when you're launching this product for the duration of XYZ amount of months. These are the specific goals that we're tracking. This is how we're going to measure success. We are going to track number of free users, free active users. We're going to track number of free users that converted to paid users. We're going to track, month on month churn rates, whether they are increasing or reducing. So things like that, you just want to pay attention. You just want to be sure that everybody is aligned on what you're tracking and everybody understands why you're tracking those specific goals, so that you're not just tracking things just for tracking sake, but you're tracking them because they are relevant. And at this point, you also begin to set up like, oh, how are you going to track this? How are you going to track that? You want to make sure that everything you need to track each one of your objectives and your goals are in place. Similar to aligning on business goals is aligning with your internal teams. So at this point, you already have the goals. You know what you're going out to do with this launch, with this campaign. So you want to align with every single team that needs to be a part of this launch, which is typically most of the teams in the organization. So your product team, sales team, customer support, data team, engineering, you need to align with everybody. Everybody needs to know what they're doing and how they can support. Because if you don't align, then when you're in the middle of your launch, your things are going to probably go sideways. Some things could go wrong. There's confusion about who's taking ownership on XYZ thing. So you need to be sure that everybody knows what ownership they take. Everybody knows what role they play. Everybody knows where they need to play a role. You just need to be sure that everybody knows, okay, since our goal is to achieve this particular goal, sales, this is how you're going to come in. Marketing, this is how you're going to come in. Customer support, this is where you need to come in. And these are all the touch points, blah, blah, blah. You get my point. But you need to align with your team so that if anything is potentially like it is a risk factor or there's something that could not work as you have planned it to work at this point, your team can bring it up and say, oh, I know that we're supposed to align, I know that we're supposed to do this thing, but we haven't set up this process properly. So we need to do it now before we get to the middle of the lunch, you know. Not aligning with things is such a bad idea because many times I've seen situations where and the entire sales team don't even know that you're launching a product. The entire sales team don't even know the day you're launching a product. And so you just suddenly launch a product, you do a lead generation campaign, and all of a sudden you just reach out to sales and send them a list of 200 names and say they need to follow up with these people. But at this point, sales they've made absolutely no preparation. They don't have sequences that they can send out to these people to convert them. They don't have a plan. Everyone's around everywhere. Everyone is just all over the place. There's confusion. People don't know what to be doing. You see how that can be very bad, especially during a launch. So you want to be sure that every team knows what they're doing, and you want to make sure that everybody is ready for that big day, you know, the day where you actually roll out your launch activities. After you've aligned with your business teams on the business goals, the next thing to do is to sort out your positioning and messaging. And of course, positioning and messaging is very tricky. It is like the core of everything. It's the core of your launch. If you get it right, you can really take it home. And what you can do to get it right is to pay attention to your customers during that research process. What is it they're saying about your product? What are they saying is the favorite thing about that product? What are they saying this particular because of this particular thing? I would use your product over your competitor's product. So you need to pay attention to what the majority of your customers are saying they love about you. If they love your customer support and like compared to every other thing about your product, it's your customer support that just stands out because the rest of the things you have, your competitors have those as well. Then maybe you want to position around that. Maybe you want to talk about how awesome you are and you want your messaging to drive this positioning home. You want to make sure that the way you're communicating your positioning is solid, you know. If people land on your website, they should understand what makes you stand out. If they land on your social media, they should understand what makes you stand out. Do not be vague. Vague messaging does not do very well. It just waters down your whole positioning and makes it difficult for someone to say, okay, I'm going to choose you because of this particular thing that you do really well. So put that in consideration. And also be careful not to copy your competitor and be careful not to do something that your competitor can copy immediately. So, yes, if you're going to position around something, be sure that you can do it very, very well because if you say you are great at customer support and your customer support is not so great, then customers will lose their trust. And now we've gotten to the juicy part, which is to create your launch plan. So this is like your marketing plan, the actual activities that you're going to do from day one of launch day, from when you tell people that you've launched this exciting product. So typically I break it down into three stages: the pre-launch, the launch, and the post-launch. Not every product deserves a three-stage breakdown, but I decided, why not just talk about all of the three stages? However, it depends on the product. If you feel like a product needs some kind of pre-launch thing, just to build excitement about the product before it actually launches, then go ahead to do a pre-launch. But you don't need to do it. A pre-launch, I only do it if I think that the feature is, a big deal, and I want to build excitement around it before it launches. Kind of like what ChatGPT did before GPT launched. They just like talked about the product, they built excitement around it. So when it launched, there were already so many people waiting to try out the product. So if you think your product is a chat GPT in the making, you think your product is just really, really good, it's exciting. It's so exciting that teasing about it will get people interested, will get people, signing up to your wait list and stuff, then you should go ahead and do that. During your launch, when you're doing the launch plans and stuff, it's at this point that you're creating those activities that you would execute on during the duration of your launch. So if your launch is 6 months or 3 months in duration, what are you going to do on day one of your launch? Are you going to do a social media announcement through a video that you've created with your customers and how they can use your product? Are you going to do a press release? Are you going to do a blog post? Are you going to send out emails to your customers? What are all of the activities you would do on day one? What are the things you would do on day three? What are the things you would do on day 5, day 6, and just like that up until month 3, up until the last day of your launch. Of course, the launch is not supposed to end like on a day, but ideally there's supposed to be like some kind of pause period, right? So you can say you're going to launch this product steadily for 3 months and then do a pause and see how things look like after then. Of course, while you're doing your launch, it's important to set time for yourself to track things and review how things are performing. So don't get drawn into the trap of executing on all of the activities that you've planned out without pausing for a second to say, how did things go over today? For me, I would set up like a 30-minute call every 2 days to review what has happened and just see how things are going. I check out how people are taking the launch, what are the comments, how are people trying it out, how many people have started using the product, just things like that, so that if something is going wrong, you're able to immediately fix it. So you're not realizing something is wrong 10 days into the problem. So you want to be sure that you're tracking and paying attention to these things. Also, when you're creating launch plans, you must pay attention to the goals that you have. If your goal is to get 1 million users in 3 months, then your launch must be able to actually do this. Let it not be that your plan is too small for your goal or your plan is too big for your goal. Do you understand? So it's bad when you have a plan that cannot actually achieve the goal. It means that your launch would fail before it even gets to try in the market. So do a proper assessment. If your goal is to get 1 million people, then you know for a fact that social media alone cannot help you get it in 3 months. So having social media as your only launch activity cannot work for you. What other thing can you try out? Where are the other places you can go to meet a large amount of your target audience? Can you even get 1 million people on digital channels alone? If not, what about offline channels? Are there places you can consider offline? So your launch should never be restricted to anything. Think outside the box. Um, Make sure that you're covering every possible opportunity that's on the table. You have to do everything to get to the goal. Let it be that, the things that you have to do will cost a lot of money, and then you talk to your teams and they say, you know what, this is costing a lot of money for us to achieve this, so let's step down the goal. But if the business decides they want a big goal, they want to get 10 million users in 3 months, then you as a product marketer have to create initiatives that can actually get them to that goal, however big it is. Just do your job essentially, because I mean, that's the job. The post launch part of the launch plan is usually that part where things slow down a little bit. The way that I think of a post launch is the time when I get to assess how we are acquiring customers without heavy launch activities. So maybe after 6 months, after 3 months, 4 months, depends on how long you run your campaign for, I decided to pause all of like most of the paid activities. I pause on them and I just watch to see if we still get reasonable acquisitions month on month. I want to see if we can sustain that product launch with more organic activities than paid activities, because you can't keep running huge campaigns like continuously for a lifetime. So at this point, I slow down and I try to see how the product can sustain itself without ongoing paid activities, and I pay attention. I see what we can do. Do we introduce some PR activities here or there? What are the things that we can do long term to sustain the product? So at this point, you can start introducing those things. So some of them would include things like content marketing. It can include community, building a strong community and managing that community. So then you focus your attention into the new community you've like started building, and just try to build a more sustainable way of acquiring, engaging, and retaining customers at this point. So yes, this is what that plan usually is. I know that it's simple as I'm saying it right now, but it can be a very intense process. But it would help you a lot if you have an execution checklist, which I always have. And the checklist will just list out every single item of things that you need to execute on. This way you don't need to like think of everything by yourself. You just need to go every day and say, okay, today these are the things I need to execute on. This is how I'm going to execute on them. These are the things this other person has to execute on, because of course you have to manage the entire launch. It means managing your own tasks as much as managing the task of the person in sales, the person in support, everybody. As a product marketer, it's your job to manage that entire launch. So having a checklist has helped me a lot, and I know that it will help you as well. So yes, always have a checklist. It does not need to be a big deal or anything serious. Just a simple list of things you need to execute on a day-to-day basis. Another thing that I like to do is to create a customer onboarding journey. So this helps me understand all of the touch points I need to pay attention to. It also helps me to understand what in this customer journey could be a problem so that I can solve it before we get to that point. Because I don't want to be in the middle of a launch and realizing that customers are not able to go from point A to point B because they are stuck somewhere they cannot navigate. So I want to make sure that the onboarding journey is seamless. An onboarding journey also covers things like helping the customer navigate and do the things you want them to do. So when a customer downloads your product or they sign up to your product, you want them to do a bunch of things, right? Ideally, you want to think of this thing, right? So if you want them, for example, because I work in fintech, if I want them to sign up, create a business bank account, and then put money in their bank account, then I create this journey for them. And this journey would also include like emails that can help them get there, push notifications, in-app notifications, all of that kind of stuff. If I don't have this thing prepared, I'm not able to guide my customer into taking the next step. So when someone signs up at this point, because I've thought about their journey, the minute they sign up, I tell them, welcome, you signed up. Now let's go ahead to create a bank account. You see, to do the exact thing that we want them to do. When they create a bank account, I tell them, yeah, you created a bank account. Now let's put money in that bank account. And just like that, you want to be sure that you're taking charge of this journey, you understand the journey, and that you're able to carry a customer along in that journey so that they don't have a reason to break. If a customer decides to break in that journey, at least you know that you're doing your best. Like, you want to make sure that you give your launch the best chance it has to win. So taking this into consideration, like understanding your customer onboarding journey and planning it out, creating the communication for your customer so that when they get to every point in their journey, there's something to nudge them ahead to do the next thing. Because customers have busy lives, or they forget about things sometimes. Sometimes they might not want to abandon your product, they just forgot. So you want to be sure that you're able to help them navigate their journey seamlessly, which is why this step is super, 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 super important. So do not forget about your customer onboarding flows, please. Similar to the onboarding journey, there's also like a customer engagement thing that I do where I try to create a process for managing users. So, for example, someone signs up to your product, the person does not use the product after 1 week. Another person signs up to the same product, the person is using the product actively, actively, actively. So I create a process where I say, okay, if someone signs up and is using the product actively, these are the kind of communications that would go to them. This is the way that I would engage them to keep them using the product, to make sure that they utilize all of the value that this product has to offer. Versus if this other person signs up and they don't use the product, this is how I'm going to try to re-engage them. And this is how I'm going to try to get them to see the value of the product and get them to start taking baby steps to becoming an active user. For a user that's already super, super active, I don't need to worry about them. Maybe at this point, I start introducing upselling and cross-selling things for them. Maybe I feel like they would really benefit from this other add-on that we have. So I would suggest that to them. Of course, you would do this. You don't need to do all of these things alone. I would always do this I would do this with the sales team. I'd always collaborate with the sales team to do this stuff. But the most important part of it is that you, as the owner of a GTM, as the owner of the product launch, need to be thinking about this stuff. Because if not, you're just like leaving things to chance with your launch. And it's just not a good look because when you start acquiring customers and you have no plan for, managing the customers you're acquiring, engaging the customers you're acquiring, then it's just going to be like you end up acquiring 10,000 users. You're not even sure those that are active, those that are inactive. Okay, those that are inactive, how can you reactivate them? Then you're like scrambling to do so many things at the same time. And I personally love to do a launch and just be at peace and be tracking, reviewing, iterating, looking at what's doing well, doing that very well, looking at what's not doing well, making sure that I can fix what's not doing well. You get my point. So I love to chill a little bit when I'm in the middle of a launch because all of that crazy, crazy hassle can be overwhelming. So you want to make sure that you just pay attention to some of these things. You might not be able to set up sequences for everything, but do the best that you can. Do at least the bare minimum here and just say, for someone that's active, this is kind of comms that you're going to send out to engage them and carry them along. For someone that's inactive, this is the kind of comms that you would send to engage them as well and get them to start using their account actively. So at this point, my GTM plan is looking solid. I have done my research on the market, customers, products, competitors. I have my positioning and messaging guide. I've aligned on business goals. I know what metrics that we're tracking for sure. I have my pre-launch plan. I have my launch plan. I have my post-launch activities. I've also reviewed the customer onboarding journey. I've created the communication plan for them just to carry them across nicely. I have also reviewed the engagement plan for customers as they start using the product. So at this point, I'm feeling a bit more relaxed. So the next thing I would do is to just do a final review of my touch points. What are all of the touch points that customers would engage with us through? So what are the ways that customers would find the product? The websites. Let me do a final review there. The our social media channels, the product itself, every single touch point that exists, you want to be sure that you've taken a look at it one last time. If there's any touches you need to do on your website, this is the time to just do final touches. If there's a form somewhere that you need to, maybe you have like a wait list. For me, that typically has like pre-launch processes, and I have a wait list. I'd review that wait list form, make sure that everything is in order. I make sure that my subscriptions for any tool that I'm going to be using during my launch to track events and just manage events smoothly. I make sure that those subscriptions are paid for and everything is all right. If I'm going to run a campaign, I make sure that all of the assets for my campaign are crafted and already in a folder. My email sequences are built out. I make sure that sales are aligned. Everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing. And then I send my final email to internal teams and let them know that we in the product marketing team are ready to launch the product, and this is the date that the product will launch. I also like give them a brief overview of things that will happen once the product launches, just as a refresher to make sure that everybody is carried along nicely. I know it sounds like a lot, but trust me, well, it is a lot, but it is a lot, but at the end of the day, it just makes your work a lot easier because the minute that email goes out, everybody knows what they're doing, everybody is in on the launch, there's no distraction, everybody is just like, it's just clear what everybody's working on, and it's just easier for you to do your job well. Finally, the last thing you can do is to create a mitigation plan. What would happen if your launch does not go well? What happens if the minute you launch your product, someone launches something groundbreaking in that does the same thing that your product is supposed to do, only 10 times better? What do you do? So how can you mitigate against certain risks that could potentially make your product launch fail? And what would you do in those instances? So you need to just as a precautionary thing, to be very honest, I don't always do it, but I always do it if I'm launching a tier one product, like a big product, a product that is a big deal for the entire organization. Then I most definitely do a risk assessment because it's important to know what the potential loss would be like. Because if you don't do it, then if something like this happens, if the product doesn't do as well as you've intended it to do, as the plan has intended it to do, it's very easy to lose confidence in yourself. It's very easy to beat yourself up, to get confused, get lost, and just like, I don't know, it's just very easy to lose yourself if things don't go well. But if you have a plan and you've already said, okay, if for some reason people don't pay attention to my campaign and everything that I'm doing, this is what we would do. We would just immediately roll back the launch. If I launch this product and within 1 month we're not able to get like XYZ amount of new users, of new acquisitions, or we're not able to get XYZ amount of active users, then it's time to roll back the product launch. Then I'm immediately going to pause on activities, or I'm going to pause on paid activities and focus on doing only organic activities, like only non-paid activities, right? Just because you've noticed that there's something wrong with your launch and you want to fix whatever is wrong before going back out there. It's also good because you're able to set what a failure number looks like for you. So if your goal is to achieve 10,000 new users and you're launching the product in 3 months and you've told yourself that, okay, every month you want to do 4,500 new users, 4,500 new users, or you want to do 3,500 new users every month, because you've already calculated that by the time you're hitting the third month, you should have hit 10,000 users. And by the first month, you're only able to do 500 users. At this point, you can already tell that things are not going to go your way, that despite the fact that your plan all your activities have been done in line with helping you get 3,500 users in month one, you were only able to get 500 users. Then you want to pause at this point and see if maybe you're targeting the wrong audience. Maybe your target audience is just not large enough to get you that kind of number of customers. So you want to pay attention to this thing. You want to have a plan for what do you consider a failed launch. Is it in number of acquisitions? Is it in number of paid subscribers? Is it in this? Is it in that? So you want to understand that because it's very important to know, okay, if this thing happens this way, it's failure. If it happens this way, then it's like in the middle of failure, but not a total failure. But it's also not the best like outcome. Versus if it happens this way, then this is a win. This is like excellent outcome. So you want to be able to understand this and then create a plan for what to do if you have a failed launch. So would you roll back all paid activities, pause all paid activities immediately and focus on only organic activities and maybe go ahead to launch another research campaign, right? So you want to just create a plan for yourself so that you don't get overwhelmed, you don't lose yourself, you don't feel like you just don't lose yourself generally because it can be very tough. That brings me to the end of all of my steps to launching a product. So a disclaimer is that it depends. It always depends on the kind of product you're launching. Sometimes I don't go through all of these steps if what I'm launching is just a simple feature or it's not like a product that's it's just we're trying to do maybe I have a smaller budget and I can't really carry out as much research, as much things as I want to do. So it always depends. Just understand your product, understand what you need to do to get there. But no matter what you do, the thing that you should never not do is your research. Never skip on your research process. Never skip on team alignment. Never skip on goal alignment. And never skip on creating a journey for your customers throughout your launch process because these things can make or break your launch, right? These things are those things that sometimes you think they're not part of it, they don't make a big part of your GTM process. But at the end of the day, if you're not aligned on goals, no matter what you do, and the goal is never was not clear from the start what this product launch is supposed to achieve, then it just feels like wasted effort. The same way, if you have great goals and you have everything together, but your teams don't even know you're launching a product, then your efforts could also just be in vain. So you want to make sure that you never skip on these things that I just mentioned and go ahead to create a successful go-to-market launch for your products. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you in my next video. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more product marketing topics, tips, and best practices. See you in my next video.